All right, so like y'all got chapter 6, section 3 pulled up about Jefferson altering the nation's course. Just gonna go over. So I just want to ask a quick question before we get started. We're familiar with like Federalists, Anti-Federalists, and all that, and what they are,
Yeah.
what they mean. Okay.
Sure.
So you see number 1 on your notes. How did Thomas Jefferson simplify the federal government? He wore casual clothing. He wouldn't wear a wig, and he walked to his inauguration. You know, this is before cars, so mostly they would go in carriages, but he walked as kind of a symbol, symbolic with being like the average man, common man. Didn't wear a wig. We've all seen the pictures of Washington and all the people from back then with a wig on, white powdered wigs, but he wouldn't wear it. He reduced the size of the government and the military. He cut the size of many government departments, reduced spending on the Army, and they had a planned expansion of the Navy, and he halted that immediately. Trying to give y'all a second. All right. He cut overall costs of the government, eliminated internal taxes. You can see that reduced influence of the National Bank in favor of free trade. He was a constructionist, a strict constructionist, which meant, anybody know what constructionist is? Anybody? He followed the Constitution to the letter of the law. If it was in the Constitution, he followed it. And he also, being an anti-federalist, wanted less government, more people. So since he wanted less government, he did all these things to kind of minimize the government's influence and what they could do. In the free trade, laissez-faire, correct?
Yeah, laissez-faire economics.
Yeah, I've heard of laissez-faire. Means let it be free, let the people do, get the government out of the way, and let the people run the show. Everybody good? Next is just a picture of Jefferson, if we can get to it. Okay, 2, how did his presidency help bring about Southern dominance in federal politics? He's the first president to take office in D.C. D.C. at this time wasn't some big rustling, bustling city like you think of now, but its place on the map kind of showed a seminal moment for Southern politics. Before Jefferson, if you looked at an electoral map, presidential map, it would be nothing but Federalists. Federalists won everything. Washington was a Federalist, all this. Adams, after him, was a Federalist. Jefferson came in, and his official party was actually Democratic Republican, I think. Democratic Republican was the name of his party. When he came in, being from Virginia, he would take all of the South. Plus, he believed in being an agrarian society, so the South, being farming and all that, loved Jefferson. And he realized that all the Southern votes would eventually overtake the Federalists. So this Southern dominance helped get rid of all the Federalists. His political moderation won him support and decreased support for the Federalists. And his national expansions increased support for Southern representatives. If you can see an electoral map, Jefferson's election and then all the elections after Jefferson would show the Federalist Party just being slowly disappearing. We good? Good? Okay. Okay, go ahead. That's fine. Good. Okay. Number 3. How did the Federalists lose power during the Jefferson administration? We all know who a famous Federalist is, right? Alexander Hamilton, read the Federalist Papers. He was killed in a duel with Aaron Burr, and also his politics proved that he was not radical like the Federalists claimed he was. Good. All right. That's next. I believe it skips and goes to those terms on the bottom, doesn't it?
He does.
Okay. So you see those terms on the bottom? Judiciary Act of 1801.
I'll have to make another page.
I might have to make another page. I'll make sure I read that. Reduce the number of judges in the Supreme Court from 6 to 5. So you would have had the Chief Justice and 4 others joining him. This created 16 new judgeships for 6 judicial courts. And Adams attempted to pack the court with people from the Federalist Party. So he had just been defeated in the election of 1800, I believe. 1800. No, it would have been the election of 1801. He just lost the election of 1801 to Jefferson and only had so much time left in office. Him being a hardcore Federalist, Jefferson being the opposite, he wanted to pack the courts with as many Federalist judges as he can to try to preserve their influence in the court system. So to do this, he passes the Judiciary Act of 1801, which allows for these new judgeship positions to be created. Therefore, he could put more judges that he wanted into the system. And this is Adams, by the way, in case you just pointed that out.
How does this impact political power in government?
How does this impact political power in government?
With all those new judgeships, who's making all the decisions?
Oh, the Federalists now, right? Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah.
Uh,
So what she's asking
I'm
is like,
fumbling this.
she's asking like, because he's trying to pack these courts.
With
Like, what's the point, man? Like, what's the point?
To preserve the Federalist power, right?
Yeah, so they're gonna make all the decisions for everything that's going on. Is like everything that gets made, any like laws that are put out there, who's gonna make the decision on that? Well, who is the final say on any laws in America? The Supreme Court is. So he packs all these courts with all these new judgeships. They're gonna make every final decision on any law that's ever made in America. And he's lost power. He's leaving. So he's trying to pack all these people that feel the same way he does in there because he knows that if this can get wiped out.
And that's something that still goes on today.
Yeah.
Trump did it before he left office, tried to get another conservative judge on the Supreme Court, and then Biden has done it, trying to make sure he gets liberal court judges on the court. So that's something that goes on even today. The president's making sure they have who they want in place before they leave. We good? We ready? Okay, so we said he's trying to pack the courts with all he wants. A lot of these judge appointments he makes, he does at his desk the night before his term ends. He signs these appointments, known as the Midnight Judges Act, because he does it at the last minute before the clock strikes midnight to get all these new people. So he has to sign these commissions in order for the new judges to take their position. Now the Senate would approve all these immediately, and they would confirm them. There was one step they still had to take, and that was that these commissions would have to be delivered to all these judges. Most of them do, but the ones that don't end up being a big deal. Good. Trying. John Marshall. That Midnight Judges Act and all this stuff about Adams trying to pack the courts. His Secretary of State was John Marshall. So once all these midnight judges were appointed and the Senate confirmed, Marshall had to be the one to go deliver all these commissions to these new judges. Actually, we're a total of 42 new judges, 16 of them with these newly created positions that we talked about with the Judiciary Act. He gets them all delivered except 4. One of these 4 he doesn't deliver is to William Marbury. Marbury would then sue because he didn't get his commission. I think I want to say this. He would sue because he was not delivered his commission to be judge that he felt like he was rightfully owed because he had been appointed judge. Well, the Supreme Court goes to hear the case to see if he's allowed to receive that commission and decides that they shouldn't even have the ability to hear the case at all. That the original Judiciary Act of 1789 expanded the power of the courts further than they should be. Therefore, they cannot hear the case. Them saying that the original Judiciary Act of 1789 expanded the power, they struck that down, saying that was illegal and unconstitutional. And this is the first time the Supreme Court had struck down anything in the Constitution, any law that had been made. And this is now called the principle of judicial review, where they could review other laws on the books to make sure that they uphold the Constitution and are not illegal themselves. And Marshall, who was the Secretary of State, like we said, ends up being the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and ends up being the one who hands down the decision. So I find it odd that he hands down a decision on something that he was kind of part of to begin with. Even though his decision is just to not hear it at all. We good? We look good. Now we're going back up to number 4 on your sheet. I should have waited to hear to say all that. William Marbury, one of the men chosen to the judgeship positions by Adams. He was appointed as a justice of the peace in, I believe, Washington, D.C. And like I said, did not receive his commission because they didn't have time. The guy had to deliver 42 commissions and couldn't get to all of them. So then Jefferson would take over as president and have James Madison as the Secretary of State. And Jefferson, being the anti-federalist, did not like all of these new Federalist judges that Adams had tried to appoint. So Jefferson orders Madison not to deliver these appointments because he doesn't want any more Federalist judges. He feels that now that he's president, he has the power to do that. So William Marbury, who should have received one of his commissions, sues James Madison, saying, I'm owed that commission. It's by law, I should have it. And that's what it goes to court, and the court says, actually, we can't even hear this case because of a previous law was illegal. So they strike down the law, and it's the inception of judicial review, which is a very, very important thing. It's huge. We ready? Good. Louisiana Purchase, double the size of the U.S. You can see on the map back there, it's basically the entire middle portion of the United States is that what the Louisiana Purchase was. Y'all probably seen it before. And it expanded the power of the presidency and the central government. Does anyone know how it expanded that power? Anybody? Did Jefferson have the power to buy Louisiana? You know? Did he have the power? Well, nowhere in the Constitution does it say he has that power. And he actually, being, like we said earlier, a strict constructionist, wanting to follow the Constitution to the letter, this is a dilemma for him. He didn't know whether he should go along with it because it's not anywhere in the Constitution that says he can. But he ends up going along with it, which expands his power. He does something that's beyond what he says he can do. So that expands the power of his presidency. I mean, double the size of the U.S. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer to go ahead and do it. But to make sure he was within the Constitution, he thought about it for a while and deliberated, but eventually went ahead and went on with it.
So to this point, we've done a map activity on the Louisiana Purchase. They noted it double the size, they know what everything was included in that. One of the things that we are going to do after we get done with the next couple assignments is we're going to look at that particular question. Does Thomas Jefferson have the ability to buy this? Was that under his scope of being the president? That's one of our next assignments.
Okay. I think for most presidents, they would have just went on with it like it was nothing. But with Jefferson being such a strict constitutionalist,
he asked Congress for an amendment to do this.
Yeah, and
but they drug their feet to do it.
Yeah, he felt like Napoleon would change his mind on selling it by the time they got it all done. We're gonna move on. We're ready. All right. We've all heard of Lewis and Clark, right? Certainly. Okay, good. One of their main goals when they set out on this exploration was not only just to see what's in the Louisiana Territory and explore it, but they wanted to find a waterway to the Pacific. I mean, looking at that, there's no way there's going to be any body of water that goes from around in here all the way to the Pacific. But they didn't know that at the time. Many of them thought it may be the Missouri River. So one of the things they set out looking for was the mouth of the Missouri River, hoping that it would lead them all the way to the Pacific. Obviously, that's not what happened. of Sacagawea. She's an interpreter and a guide for them. She had just had a child, a son, when Lewis and Clark found her. So many depictions of her have her with a baby on her back. You may have seen her on the back of a gold dollar. That she was very instrumental in helping them explore the entire territory. And they eventually made it all the way to the Pacific coast. They made it all the way to the end, all the way. And kind of fulfilled the whole Manifest Destiny thing. We ready? Daniel Boone, one of the greatest frontier guides. Almost everything in the United States west of the Mississippi was frontier. Page 212 in your books. It's going to have a good picture of Sacagawea. It's going to show her on that gold dollar. Page 212. Emily Boone created the Wilderness Road, which ran up through the Cumberland Gap, I believe, and into Kentucky, and would eventually be extended even beyond that. But I'm not terribly familiar with it. We're moving on. Eventually. Aaron Burr, former vice president. So back then, we see a presidential election now, and it's a president and a vice president running together. Back then, if you finished second in the election, you were the vice president. So if you put that in 2020 terms, the president would be Biden and the vice president would have been Trump. Imagine how that would have worked. Anyway, that's Burr. So who's the vice president? If you go to page 210 in your textbooks, there's a little picture, a little thing showing about the duel that he had where he shoots and kills Alexander Hamilton. Pretty fascinating way to handle a dispute, is to have an actual duel. It's kind of petty, isn't it? Some bad remarks made at a dinner. To let that get under your skin and go have a duel and shoot and kill him. Ready? Here's just a picture of what it may have looked like when they dueled. That should be the end of it. I believe it is. right, and it's on Schoology, right?
Okay.
On Schoology,
Make sure you pull up your ESPN.
Alexander Hamilton versus Jefferson.
Yes, turn in section 3, and then pull up your ESPN assignment, Jefferson versus Hamilton.
Are we done with this?
In section 3.
Well, that's
yes.
section 3, yeah.
Pull up ESPN.
So I think y'all are sort of familiar with ESPN. I said y'all done it before. E, economic, S, social, P, political, N, environment. It's a pretty lengthy passage here, talking about Jefferson and Hamilton, their differences, what their visions for America would be, how they would handle the government. And you're going to go down through here and highlight we're going to go through here and highlight if a section is referring to the economic stuff. So like each one will have a different color, if that makes sense. E would have a color, S would have a color, P have a color, N have a color. And you're going to go down through here and highlight the text that relates to E, S, P, or N. So
your green is your economic, your red is your social, yellow's political, and blue is environmental.
okay.
Okay, and that is on your directions in Schoology. Okay.
So we're going to go over the first paragraph together out loud so you kind of have an idea, better idea of what's going on. So follow along with me. In George Washington's farewell address, 1796, the retiring president warned that the creation of political factions, quote, sharpened by the spirit of revenge, would most certainly lead to formal and permanent despotism. Despite Washington's cautionary words, two of his closest advisors, Jefferson and Hamilton, helped to form the factions that led to the dual-party system under which the U.S. operates today. Other men, most notably James Madison and John Adams, also contributed to the formation of political parties, but Hamilton and Jefferson came to represent the divisions that shaped the early national political landscape. So we're looking for economic, social, political, and environmental. Anybody? Do we see anything social, political in that first paragraph?
The farewell address for political.
Yeah, that's part of it. Really, that whole sentence, that whole, the retiring president warned at the creation of political factions. That's clearly P, political. Really, the whole first thing until the first period. Really, up until that first period, is all going to be political. Anything else we see that's political in that first paragraph? The formation of political parties, that's a pretty easy political one, isn't it? We're at 31 minutes. You got it now? Yeah, that's political. Something else in here that's political? Be the dual party system. That's political. We know what dual party is, right? Republicans, Democrats. This has really started with Hamilton and Jefferson, even though Washington told them not to. Why do we think Washington would warn against political parties?
Creates divide amongst the people.
I mean, we see it today, right? We don't identify as Americans, we identify as Republican or Democrat. And it just becomes a label and it separates you from everybody else instead of just being an American. Also, I guess you could say that Madison and Adams contributed to the formation of political parties. It was also pretty political as well. So the whole rest of the document, you're going to read and highlight based on if it's economic, social, political, or environmental. Probably not going to find much environmental, but there may be. So I'm going to give y'all time to read that whole thing, and then I'll come around in a few minutes, make sure everyone know what we're doing. Cooper, you know what you're doing? Are you good at it? But you know what you're doing? Okay. Are you in this class? Are you really? Okay. No, computer closed. I was about to say, man, we.
He's not in this class.
You good?
This is Now, look, we know that first paragraph we had a lot of political stuff, but as we get into paragraph 2, 3, 4, and 5, you're going to be seeing more environmental, social. I say that you probably won't find anything much about environmental. It's probably going to be more social, political, and economic. But you are going to have different things that you're going to highlight there. You're not just trying to yellow that.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that stuff's not going to be political. That thing you just have to look to. But you got the different categories. It explains to you all the things that would be social that you find. Does that make sense? I've got different categories for you to look at. social religions, anything that you see in there that deals with any of it.
So that could be social work.
Like, give me an example. That's good.
So I just talked to, what's your name?
Like, one.
One. I just talked to one about it, but I think it's worth noting for everybody. Jefferson believed that America's success lay in its agrarian tradition. Anybody know what agrarian tradition is? Farming. Everything we did basically was farming, getting our crops, getting a good yield. That's our agrarian tradition. That's how we make our economy go. And Jefferson thought that America's future success was going to be rooted in our ability to farm and produce.
So what could that be labeled as? Could that be labeled as what? It's not political, is it? It's what? It's economic, or it could even be what?
It could be social because it's a tradition.
Okay, because once you go, again, you go back and look at your chart, that under that social, you've got norms and cultures. So that could be something that you got, maybe you put as social, okay?
Yeah, but that could be either one. It really could.
And then look at the next sentence right there. Obviously, it's economic, right?
Hamilton's economic plan hinged on the promotion of manufacturers and commerce. So you can also see a difference in the way they thought about the future of America too. Jefferson thinking it was going to be rooted in farming and our ability to produce crops. Hamilton, on the other hand, wants us to be a manufacturing giant and participate in world commerce. And I guess nowadays we kind of do both. I'm just going to finish this whole paragraph. While Hamilton distrusted popular will and believed that the federal government should wield considerable power in order to steer a successful course, Jefferson placed his trust in the people as governors. Now, for that sentence, they're talking about Jefferson trusting people and Hamilton wanting the government to have the power. Is that social, political, or what? What? Political? I think it's kind of social. What do you think, Coach?
But what you're seeing there, guys, is the fact that, once again, this is all differences of opinion between two guys, right? So what are you seeing? You're seeing the formation of political parties because of this. And you're also seeing, from very early on in the country, how different the North and the South is. And you could 100% go back to these two guys and say, okay, these guys are showing you the differences in the country. All right, which is going to eventually lead to a whole bigger thing. What is all this going to lead to in the future? Civil War. And we're seeing it right here from the very beginning of our country. Mm-hmm. We're seeing these things play out between two groups of people, political parties starting to evolve, the differences of opinion, and even the way they think about agrarian tradition versus manufacturing and commerce. You're already seeing it. From the late 1700s, you're already seeing this start to play into a part. But a lot of these things could be social, they could be economic, because it is differences of opinion, it is the way people live their lives, okay? So all these things are playing a part in this. So you should have on this second paragraph, you should have a lot of different colors there.
Yeah, you should have at least 3 different colors.
Okay? You probably didn't find anything environmental there. You probably didn't. But as you get into these next ones, try to find stuff that you can label different colors. I shouldn't see just a paragraph of yellow other than that first paragraph. Got a ton of political stuff in there. But from this point forward, you need to be trying to find stuff that was, and look, what does this talk about right here? Chosen people of God. Where does that fit in the mix at? Where does religion go? Okay, go back to your chart. Look at your ESPN chart. Let's figure out where religion's at. That'd be something you put for religion. Okay, so use that chart. See where this stuff belongs. And all this is, guys, is annotating. You're annotating a primary source document. You're looking at things that these guys said, things they believed in, and you're annotating.
Good. Good. Can see that?
Let me show you how to fix that. This makes it so much easier. You're going to go here and text this. This is why. It's the same thing as that.
That's a political position.
And I don't know that's gonna fix it this point out.
It's nothing but winning, right?
I like it, man. I like it.
I hate Tennessee, but that's respect.
That's why it's so hard.
How's it going, man? Going good.
This is why you always look at these text regulations.
We're gonna get over here.
Let's
try.
Never have this.
Any
and
questions?
you go back and drop stuff
That's
in the
perfect,
chart.
that's great.
Keep talking to them, because all you've done is create highlight. So can you use the text highlighter and you can write the text highlighter?
Y'all good over here too? No, I have to go back.
Oh, yeah, up there, we're gonna take lines, through the lines, down, and see how it's got that now. That's gonna allow you to like. It's so much easier. With the text recognition, with them through the lines. Then you just use the text recognition, and it's gonna like, completely restart the page. But it'll allow you to like. Should. Yeah, but we're gonna have time to finish this up, turn it in. We're probably gonna do that with the Louisiana Purchase, for instance, of the week thing. Let's get started.
After this.
Jay.
There's one thing up here I want y'all to see. I know some of you guys aren't here yet. I want you to look at that last sentence. I want y'all to look at that last sentence. Just think about that last sentence right there. Now, how many political parties were there? Two political parties, right? What are they called? And you can see right there, he mentions that, doesn't he? He says, Americans are all Republicans and all Federalists. You see that? That's the issue we have. This is what Mr. Ferris was talking about earlier. the fact that we're so divided today in politics because we're label ourselves as a Democrat or a Republican, right? He tells you right here, he says in his first inaugural address, he says, yeah, we're all Federalists, we're all Republicans, but we're all what, really? What are we really? We're Americans. And that's kind of where we're failing the system right now is we label ourselves, we're Americans. And we really need politicians to do what's best for America, not best for the Democrats or what's best for the Republicans. And that's what George Washington told us from the very beginning. He said political parties will be the downfall of the country. It will divide us. It's a danger to national unity and safety. And this is what Thomas Jefferson's saying again here. He's saying, I know you guys think you're a Republican or a Federalist, but we're Americans. And we have to figure out how to fix that. I think in today's politics and society, that's our biggest issue is we're so focused on these labels instead of just worried about what's best for America. And if we could ever get to a point where we get rid of these labels, we're going to be better off. But right now, that's what we're stuck on. But he's telling you here on this document, we got to fix that. All right, if you're running through this and you're highlighting stuff, just like Mr. Ferris told you, make sure you're highlighting. If you get finished with it, then you're welcome to turn that in. Okay? And he mentioned this earlier to you. He was talking about the Louisiana Purchase. You don't have to turn that part in, just the part that you've highlighted. He mentioned the Louisiana Purchase to you earlier. Okay? And he mentioned a kind of like a pre-knowledge stuff about what did you know what it is and all that good stuff. But he asked you a probing question, right? The probing question was, does Thomas Jefferson have the ability to buy the Louisiana Purchase? So he's already got you thinking about that before we even look at it. And that's what our next assignment is. I want you to pull that up when you get done highlighting. And I want you to take some time just to dive in and find some internet materials, find some research, and just look and see, did Thomas Jefferson have the ability as President of the United States of America to purchase the Louisiana Territory from Napoleon? Go see what you can find. See if he does have the ability to go do that.
Do we have the side sources?
No, I don't want you to decide anything else. I want you to, and I've gave you specific requirements in all the assignments, okay? I've gave you some specific things to look at. I've asked you about manifest destiny. I've asked you about does he have the ability to do it? Just go answer those questions to the best of your ability using internet sources.